How do you do? We're about to unfold the story of Frankenstein. It is one of the strangest tales ever told. I think it will thrill you. It may shock you. It might even horrify you. Well, we've warned you.
You have been warned. Welcome back to Frankenstein Minute, where we dissect the Frankenstein movies 1 minute at a time. I'm Bill Evenson.
And I'm Thom Lang. And
welcome to Minute 2.
Which is the credit sequence.
Yep. Again, we're blessed with a 1 minute.
Exact 1 minute chunk of time.
Yep.
The interesting thing I found about this film is that there's no Universal logo at the beginning. Which I don't think Dracula has either. So you don't get the little plane going around the...
Yep.
Which they, I think, used from, 1927. They started using that.
Okay.
And stopped in 36 when the studio was sold.
Wow.
Yeah. So through the whole, what we think of as the Lemley era,
right?
They had the little globe with the little plane.
See, this is why. So just so anybody listening at home, the reason why we're doing this podcast is so Thom can teach me stuff like this. I'm blown away by this.
Completely useless trivia. So
no, but I never noticed that.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here embarrassed that I never noticed that wasn't on there because that is such a crucial part of these films. Is that logo?
That logo. Whoops.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and you've used that logo
as
in your own
adopted.
endeavors.
Yeah.
Or something like it.
Something like it.
A similar version of the later whatever.
Without being sued. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
I'm still not so sure about that.
So far, so good.
Well, yeah. I mean, the thing remembering as a kid, and it must be from like the Mummy or the Invisible Man or whatever, is the little.
Yeah, it's the Mummy for sure.
Yeah, I know it's on the Mummy.
Yep.
Is the little plane, and then of course as you get in,
Man, I'm sure has it.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Just I'm blown away that this doesn't have it. What do I know?
Yeah, I don't think
maybe none of them have it.
Yeah, maybe imagine the entire thing.
You've taken away my.
I'm sorry.
Reason for
robbed your childhood.
Yeah, you've ruined everything.
Worse than George Lucas.
This movie's terrible. Oh, is this the special edition? In some sense, it is.
It is. It is.
We'll get into that later.
But yeah. Well, it's become the standard edition now, but yeah. It is. It is in a sense the special edition. And we have some, generic background art of some kooky-looking guy with rays shooting out of his eyes.
It's insane.
And then something that looks like Fu Manchu,
kinda,
surrounded by a bunch of eyes swirling around.
So,
and then neither image has anything to do with what we're going to see.
No, but the guy with the rays coming out of his eyes, to me, is very reminiscent of that poster, and it's got to be. That's where that artwork has to come from, is that original poster. So there was I don't know if it's even a poster or if it was just an ad, right? For the movie that was upcoming.
A trade magazine, yeah.
In a trade magazine. Frankenstein's starring Bela Lugosi, directed by Robert Florey. And it's a giant, not entirely un-Frankenstein-like looking guy. With rays shooting out of his eyes, like King Kong. Like, he's a giant, right?
He's like 20 feet tall.
He's like, yeah. It has nothing to do with anything,
right.
But it makes it into this, I feel, right? Those rays shooooting out of the eyes, it seems like it's part of that. But although it is completely different. It's a guy, we're both doing it now. Yeah. But it's, he's got clawed hands.
And he looks...
What on earth's going on there?
He reminds me, and this is completely in retrospect, is of Ratfang from Metropolis, the mad scientist. Though he's got the wild shock of hair and the glowering eyes that the scientist from Metropolis has.
I'm going to guess that Metropolis will be something we'll talk about.
Oh, yes, we will. Absolutely.
This movie, I'm sure, owes a debt to Metropolis. You can definitely say that.
More than a subtle one.
Yeah, more than a subtle one,
and then just there's some music. Bernhard Kahn composed it. Yeah, I don't know either.
Right.
But this and the closing music is all the music it has. Mm-hmm. Well, there's some, what do they call it? Diegetic music.
Diegetic.
Yes. I went to college. I had some of that.
Exegetic? Is that the other one? I always get that wrong.
Non-diegetic.
Non-diegetic. Well, that
no,
works.
I'm serious. That's what it is. Yeah.
Probably.
During when the villagers are dancing, there's some diegetic music there. But overall, as we mentioned last time, it doesn't have a score.
Right.
Doesn't need one.
But it does have what I thought was interesting to learn. The music was written for this.
Yes.
Unlike Dracula, which plays a little bit of Swan Lake, which we'll hear again.
It's in
the Mummy.
Mummy. Yeah.
And is that it, or is there even one more? Maybe not.
Is it? It's not in Black Cat, I don't think.
Yeah, probably not.
No, I know. There's a couple. There's at least 2 or 3 that.
What I think is interesting about it is when I watch those documentaries that came with the DVDs, and now they're on the Blu-rays. They just poured them over now because they've got them.
Just everything is
And the menus and everything is Dracula is they play that music repeatedly like we're supposed to identify that piece from Swan Lake or with Dracula.
Yeah.
And it's really absurd because it's so short and so meaningless.
Right.
So it's nice to have this music, and it's great. I love it.
Yeah, it's very
also
atmospheric.
our at least as of now, our theme song.
Yeah, you just heard it.
Yeah, that's right.
No, it's a nice piece of music. It really sets the mood, particularly leading into the scene right after it, which is minute 3.
Which, stay tuned.
Yes. Hold on.
I noticed this is something that I thought about was we had talked about logos for our podcast.
Yes.
And at one time I said, Thom is the guy who does the stuff like that. He's very skilled at this stuff, but I get a little bit of input. And we did talk about it.
I remember
we were sitting at lunch, and I said, just let's make sure we don't use that. There's this almost like Comic Sans font. I couldn't remember where I'd seen it before. It was either on a DVD or was it on somewhere. Where had I seen it? And then I go to watch the movie. Well, that's where it is.
That's where it is.
It's in the stupid movie.
It's the
terrible.
title. Yeah.
It's the worst font.
The font used for the... I mean, most of the text is like in a Times, but the actual word Frankenstein...
With the quotes.
Like,
what's going on?
Yeah, is in this cheesy... Yeah.
It's awful.
Yeah.
But
I think a lot of early films that wasn't given a whole lot of thought.
I suppose that's true.
Because in the all the ancillary publicity material that came with it, posters and stuff. Usually, it's a pretty nice looking.
Yeah, that's true. The classic Frankenstein posters are classic. They're classic. They're great.
Yeah.
All that classic artwork that you see, I assume.
That you see.
I don't know. I'm not an expert enough. Yeah, in your living room. I don't know. I don't know the history well enough to know what comes from a re-release. But it seems like what comes from that time is gorgeous.
The stuff from the original 31 release is beautiful. Colors, if you see them in the find a good reproduction.
Yeah.
The ones I have in the living room, I have one from Frankenstein and one from Bride. Really rich, bright, vivid colors.
Which is interesting in and of itself.
Yeah, yeah.
By the way, I don't know if anybody's noticed. We're going to watch a black and white movie. And it's so good for that. It is. No one's even ever considered colorizing.
There's some clips in a shitty John Hughes movie called Weird Science.
Oh,
from
really?
the 80s, yeah. Kids are watching it on TV. And it's colorized.
Oh, my God. So
don't do it.
You wouldn't think they colorized it for Weird Science. Somebody must have
colorized it. No, they did, because there's clips, and they kind of intersperse clips from Frankenstein and Bride sort of indiscriminately.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
And it's colorized, and what thought process went into that?
Oh, my God.
But again, it's Weird Science, so,
yeah, that's true. That movie hasn't aged. The idea hasn't even aged well.
Of horrific teen movies from the 80s.
There's been a reevaluation of John Hughes, sort of.
Yes.
Generally, as far as his.
Well, Molly Ringwald.
Molly
had a lot to say about that.
Yeah, it was a good art. She had a
lot to say.
She did, and it was really good.
And
Weird Science isn't gonna dissuade anybody from their opinion on Mr. Hughes.
No.
Oh, good. We've finally gone off this far on a tangent. It took till minute 2. Welcome to the Tangent Podcast.
Deeply apologize to fans of John Hughes and Weird Science.
Although Weird Science owes a debt to, obviously, that's why they had the clips.
Of course.
Same idea, really. No reckoning on God in that one.
Kelly LeBrock is no Elsa Lanchester either.
That's neither here nor there.
No, it isn't. So it says, Carl Laemmle presents.
Carla Laemmle?
Carl.
Oh, I thought you said Carla, because there is
Carla,
a Carla Laemmle.
There was a Carla, yeah.
That's right.
It wasn't her real name.
This is the first Universal horror film that she wasn't in? I don't know what I'm talking about.
No.
She was in Dracula. That's all I'm
the
saying.
first scene, yeah. And coasted on that for like 90 years.
90.
So, yeah,
Had to be 90 years.
God bless her.
Is she even still alive?
I think she recently passed away.
Well.
Yeah, God bless her.
Yeah.
She would turn up in all those documentaries. And
she would. And well, there you go. We talked about that end piece from Dracula.
Yeah. And she does a little bit of a recreation.
There's like, 2 seconds of Van Sloan, and then the rest is her.
Her, yeah. Well, I think Skull does some too.
Oh, I think you're right.
David J. Skull, who... Another great author we didn't mention last time.
Skull. Yeah.
If you haven't and you're reading it currently, the Monster Show, excellent. And Hollywood Gothic is also by
that's
absolutely
a Dracula
essential.
One, basically.
Well, it is, but it's sort of the again like Monster Show, the paths cross of Dracula and Frankenstein are sort of the yin yang of monsters.
Yep. And as we're talking about what happens, well, I'm going to use that as a segue.
All right. Then I don't get to talk about Carl Laemmle.
Well, you can talk about Carl Laemmle, but you went Skull,
I did.
Which is one of the things that I think is interesting. Is in this credit sequence you see credit given to 2 women. Is it Mrs. Percy B. Shelley? Is that what it says?
I've got that. That's coming up.
Okay.
That's coming up.
And Peggy Webling.
Yes, we'll get to those.
Are you doing them in credits order?
I am doing them in order. You're just going, you're off the rails.
I'm off the rails. You go on, and I'll bring back David Skull
what I was going
later.
to just point out is that Carl Laemmle presents, and then it's produced by Carl Laemmle Jr. Uncle Carl is above the title, Jr. is below.
Yeah.
And then, it says Universal Pictures Corporation, Carl Laemmle, President. A little interesting bit of trivia, going back to Dracula, is that the word president is misspelled in the Dracula credits. That was all I had there. Wasn't that worth waiting for?
How is it spelled?
With
a Z?
No, Presient. There was no D.
Prescient. More like prescient.
Prescient. Maybe he was.
Yeah,
Maybe he was. We don't know. That was all I had.
All right.
So now we get into the writing credits.
Okay. There you go.
Next.
Mrs. Percy.
Well, first is John Balderston. There's a lot to talk about him.
Sure.
Because he had... Do you want a list?
Sure.
I think these are just the from the 30s.
I think we have time for a list.
This is John Balderston, who is credited as... it's based on composition by... Not sure what that means. I think it's the play.
A reference to the music, I think.
Yeah. He and Bernhard Krause had a fight about it. And
this is how the credits
worked out. WGA stepped in, arbitrated. It was a mess. So Balderston, he rewrote the Peggy Webling play, which we'll get to.
Yep.
Which he said inconceivably crude and illiterate is his summing up of the Peggy Webling play.
Yes.
But Balderston had his hand in writing Dracula, Frankenstein, The Mummy, Mystery of Edwin Drood, Bride of Frankenstein, Mark of the Vampire, Mad Love, Dracula's Daughter, and The Mummy's Hand. Those are just his, 30s and early 40s horror credits. They go on and on and on besides that.
So that's really impressive. But how many of those do you think, Dracula's Daughter, is it we got to credit Balderston because he wrote Dracula?
Actually, he wrote a treatment for... James Whale was originally going to do it.
Okay.
Dracula's Daughter. And he wrote this treatment that's pretty wild. There's no way the Hayes office would have ever let this be produced.
So Dracula's Daughter is a little racy.
It is a little racy because it's just at the cutoff of the enforcement of the code.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one they point to usually.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But Balderston's...
Yeah, right?
We could do Dracula's Daughter Minute.
We could, actually. That might be
it'd
more interesting than Dracula itself.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's...
we could do... Are we going to do the Spanish Dracula in Spanish? Or are we going to just do it minute by minute? Minuto a minuto?
It wouldn't be a very long...
No, not very good.
No.
We kind of abandoned it. We don't know what happened.
Laurel and Hardy doing Spanish. Have you ever seen any of those?
No.
Yeah.
No,
Hal Roach did a few, like the Dracula in Spanish for the Spanish audience, and they would do their lines, phonetically.
Sure.
And it shows.
Just like that Monty Python German episode.
Yes.
Yeah. They didn't do a Spanish Frankenstein. See how I pulled it back?
Yeah, there you go. We're back. And we're back.
And we're back. We cut out all the rest of that.
If you're just joining us, this is Frankenstein Minute 2. Yes. Well, then it says, from the novel by Mrs. Percy B. Shelley.
Yeah, terrible.
Terrible.
But but no, there's no but. It's
No, there
just
is no but.
terrible.
It's just terrible. And I would hazard a guess now, certainly now, maybe not in the 30s, but now, nobody knows who Percy Shelley was, other than
Good
as
point.
the husband of Mary Shelley.
That's right.
He wrote some poems or something.
Poet, I think. Of some
So
kind.
could you name one?
Yeah. No.
No. See?
No, I couldn't. But I bet
And
somebody could.
somebody could, if you're an English lit major or some useless degree like that.
Yeah.
You could, but she wasn't his wife at the time, but Mary wrote something that has entered culture so deeply, that it's overshadowed anything he did, Byron did.
Yeah.
Any of those guys that were hanging. Maybe Polidori had a little, with his vampire tale led to Dracula.
Okay.
So
Credit where due.
credit where due. But yeah, Mary Shelley, and it's a good book.
Yeah.
It reads like a book written by an 18-year-old girl and then edited by her poet husband.
Sure.
But it's got some really interesting things to say, and she was a fascinating woman. I've read some quotes outside of it that she's said. She was ahead of her time. Go girl.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And she deserves a better credit than Mrs. Percy B.
Percy
Shelley.
B. Shelley. But I think it's interesting that it's Mrs. It is two women. This was the thing I was kind of bringing up at the beginning. Right. It's a Mary Shelley story, adapted by Peggy Webling, and then the problem with that is what history seems to have told us is that Ms. Webling's contributions appear to be somewhat minimal. And the only one I know is that for some reason Henry and Victor's names were swapped. So in the Peggy Webling version, it's Henry Frankenstein. So we have her to thank for that.
It's something that I'd read about that is that it was in honor of the actor who was playing the part. Was named Henry.
Oh, is that right?
Henry something.
Okay.
Yeah, Henry.
Right.
Henry Smith or whatever.
So we have him to thank too.
We have him to thank too. I actually kind of prefer Henry, and maybe it's just because this was my entry into it.
Yeah, it's got to be right. I don't know though. I guess I don't know.
It depends.
I guess you're right. I feel the same way, but I assume that's the reason.
Yeah.
It's because I love this movie.
Yeah,
I love
and I think
Henry
it's just what the actor brought to the role too has endeared me to it.
Also it separates it. So whenever somebody else goes to make it, then
it's
he's
always
Victor.
Yeah.
So then you go, okay, fine, that's not
right.
as good. You blew it.
Yeah, yes. Kenneth Branagh, you got it wrong.
Yeah, you got it wrong. That's one down.
Peter Cushing. Sorry.
Nice try. Play again.
Yeah.
I guess I didn't even realize. Yeah, Peter Cushing. I haven't seen that one in so long.
They're good.
I've seen Dracula more.
They bring a totally different take to it.
Yeah.
I don't know how much we want to get into Hammer versus Universal. They went the route of following the Doctor versus the creature.
Yeah.
Which it might have been, in retrospect, a better decision.
Yeah.
Because I think as those sequels progress, they do interesting things, whereas we'll find out after 4 or 5 of these, Universal didn't quite know what to do with the monster.
Yeah.
And
that is a ways down the road to talk about that.
It is a ways down the road.
But certainly not an issue at this point.
Oh, absolutely.
Although this movie spends a lot of time on the Doctor as well, and that's to my mind is very compelling.
It is.
It's sort of equal.
It is. Yeah. And I think that was kind of deliberate. The Flory script and the one prepared for Whale, the emphasis is very much on Henry.
Yeah.
And the ways in which they differ is the emphasis on the creature.
Yeah.
And we'll get into that in a moment as we continue through the screenwriting credits.
Okay. Because the next thing I was going to talk about was the billing.
Yeah.
Which is
I've still got a few writing notes here.
All right, we can still do that.
It was Peggy who switched the names. She also is responsible. I think we talk about it where that's where the creature is called Frankenstein as well. There's a scene from her play where
you just briefly mentioned.
Yeah, where Henry introduces the creature to his friend Victor. So that's where the switch happened.
Okay.
In the novel, his friend is Henry.
Yeah.
And he introduces him as Frankenstein.
which is weird.
Henry's a
Doesn't make any
little,
sense.
or Victor's a little taken aback.
Yeah.
And, it's like, well, I made him. He just as well should be called Frankenstein. Which makes sense, and I think that's where
I suppose so.
the common...
Well, his mother was the
supposition.
lightning.
Right? Yeah. The lightning.
Lightning.
Yeah.
Getting way ahead of ourselves.
Father was Frankenstein. Yeah, we're way ahead.
Yeah,
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned for more.
And then Balderston rewrote it for the stage, but it was never performed.
Okay.
Because Universal bought it
All
with
right.
the contention that they don't put it on.
Okay, so
That's
this was
why
all
they paid
in Skull's book.
Yeah, that's
that's
why
where he
they
goes into that
paid
detail.
Peggy Webling off.
Yeah.
It's not that they were going to use her stuff, because I've read it. It's shit.
Okay. You've read it.
I read her play.
Oh,
yeah.
I didn't even know you
it's-
could.
It's around,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right.
It's mighty tough sledding. And speaking of tough sledding, we'll get to Robert Florey's script here in a
Yeah,
moment.
absolutely. Oh, Robert Florey, not credited.
Not credited. Yeah, we got
he's
Garrett.
not credited in this version of the movie. He's not credited on the posters. Am I right in thinking there are some posters where he's
There
credited?
are foreign everything that was prepared for,
Including the credits?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So if you find, I don't know, something prepared for Czechoslovakian print or whatever.
Is that something you could say, Czechoslovakian, or is that that's not a thing anymore? It was then.
It was then.
That's
the
true.
former
That counts.
the former Czech Republic.
There
How's
you go.
that?
There you
I don't
go.
know. What do they call it? What is it today?
All of our Czech listeners just
just
checked out.
Oh,
boy.
Thank you. We're here all week. Tip your server.
We're here a lot longer than a
Yeah,
week.
we are. So, now I just lost my train of thought.
Yeah,
there, thanks.
no. It's not my fault, I swear. No, but the billing for Florey.
Billing for Florey, yeah, that was Wales doing.
Okay.
And we'll
Was
get,
Wales
get
doing to not have
to
it?
not have it.
Okay.
We'll get to that.
Yep.
Garrett Fort and
Did we talk
Francis.
about who Full Florey is?
No, but we're
Okay, all right.
we're
You
just
got it
give,
covered.
give me a minute,
All right.
a Frankenstein minute, if I.
Oh,
Uh-huh.
give me a.
The screenplay itself, after all these other ancillary composition by, based on, from the
Yeah.
screenplay is actually credited to Garrett Fort, who worked with Florey. We'll get to that, and Francis Edward Farrago. No idea. The only thing I would recognize in his filmography was Little Caesar with Edward G. Robinson.
Okay.
Whereas
And the pizza place.
in the
Probably
pizza
that was
place,
him.
yes, Pizzas, yes, that's him.
Little
So you
Caesars.
got him to thank for those. Garrett Fort, however, worked on Dracula.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Frankenstein, Dracula's daughter. He did the final screenplay after Balderston wrote his treatment.
Wow.
Then Fort came in and polished it
It's
up.
all
Yep.
a tangled web.
It is a tangled web. Scenario editor is Richard Schaer. He was just the head of the script department.
He made sure it was typed
Made sure it was
correctly.
typed correctly. There's still typos in it, but
Yeah. Close enough.
yeah. The it was kind of the like Bud Westmore when Bud Westmore took over the makeup department. Didn't have a whole lot to do with anything, but he gets credit in everything.
Sure.
Now we can get to Robert Florey.
Yes.
You want to go ahead, or
I got nothing.
You got
I was hoping that
nothing.
we were going to talk about Robert Florey. So let me tell you what I think, and then you can see. Robert Florey was they were excited about having Robert Florey,
Yes.
and they really wanted Robert Florey. They gave him this movie. Robert Florey was handed Frankenstein, and he was handed Dwight Fry and Edward Van Sloan and Bela Lugosi to make it with.
Yes.
And then what happened?
well, he was he was hot. You know,
Yeah.
he'd made these independent films for literally like $100
Hmm.
that were very
$119.30.
surrealistic.
$119,
$119.30, but nevertheless, I mean, literally in his kitchen.
Okay.
And he'd done the first Marx Brothers movie and a few things, so he was a hot commodity. And they were looking for a follow up to Dracula.
Yep.
And he and Richard Schaer, who we just mentioned, had lunch and proposed a few things: Invisible Man, Murders in the Rue Morgue, and Frankenstein. The one that Florey responded to was Frankenstein. So he was hired as the director and writer.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, he was handed Van Sloan, Dwight Fry, Bela Lugosi was the natural choice to... Well, Florey wanted him as Henry. Junior Lemley had other ideas.
Yes.
Which did not float well with anybody.
Mm-hmm.
But Florey came up with a lot of the things that we now associate with it. The windmill,
Right.
was his deal. Apparently, there was a bakery across from his apartment that had a windmill as a logo. And in his script, the laboratory is in the windmill.
Yeah, and that explains a line later in the film.
Yes.
We're like, what?
Yeah.
Why do you do that?
What? Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
Doesn't make any
There's
sense.
a little continuity here
Yeah.
that nobody caught.
And one of the things we talked about is we're probably going to mention Flory a lot during this movie.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
that line will
That
probably
line
mention
will
it
show
there.
up.
We'll have forgotten we talked about it and we'll
Yes.
mention it again.
Yes. So apologies in advance.
That's right.
He also came up with the criminal brain idea.
Yeah. Which is interesting, but
Yeah, I don't know if we want to get too deep into that now or when it happens.
comes up pretty soon.
Yeah, it's pretty soon, so we'll get into that. He came up with that idea of the criminal brain. His script is... It's like reading George Lucas's first draft for Star Wars.
Which I don't recommend.
No, I don't. I don't wish that on anybody.
Yeah.
Not a lot of characterization. Everybody is one-dimensional. Elizabeth hardly does a thing.
Okay.
You know,
Unlike the great role she has in the...
well,
she's all right.
she's given more.
Actually,
I mean,
yeah.
she's
we'll talk about her,
she's
sure.
pretty headstrong there towards,
Yeah.
you know.
Right.
And the monster is just that.
Yeah.
There's virtually no sympathy. There's virtually no, compassion for this thing. It is literally a killing machine.
Right.
And I think it would have been a colossally uninteresting film
Yeah.
had it been made that way.
Yeah.
So meanwhile,
That can't... There's no way that could be understated. That the sympathy for the monster... The sympathy for the monster is the most important thing in this movie.
it is. It is. It's what
be.
makes it. It's what makes it the
Yeah.
film it is.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that comes from the man who eventually took over
Yeah.
from Robert Flory.
Were you doing a segue?
I was doing a segue, unless you got something else about
Well,
it.
I just wanted to say this is maybe a little bit of a tangent, but there was an article on the internet recently in the Daily Mail. They posted something about it was something like Frankenflakes or snowflakes. This idea of snowflakes, that students nowadays feel sympathy towards Frankenstein's monster instead of thinking of him as a killing machine. Big headline in the Daily Mail, and it was like, wait, what?
But
that was the whole point from day one.
Yeah, and I think
It's amazing to think that there's even the possibility that someone could miss it. And
Right.
if you've seen this movie, there's no
way you're
going to
miss it.
Yeah.
And I think most other adaptations it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Maybe not so much in the Hammer first one,
Okay.
but certainly Frankenstein: The True Story.
Mm-hmm.
There was a Swedish one made in the mid '70s as well.
Or now I think about it, House of Frankenstein.
House of Frankenstein.
The way you were introduced to it.
Yeah,
Later, the monster's not very interesting.
It was, but still, there he was. I mean, that was
Yeah.
love at first sight.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, that's key, and it's in the book too.
Yeah.
You
of
know,
course.
it's definitely in the book. So the whole idea of the criminal brain doesn't really pan out for me. It doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
I think it was a mistake on Whale's part to have left it in, which now will segue into the man who eventually took over. So
Also hot at that time.
he was much hotter.
Much hotter.
than Robert Flory. Obviously,
hit.
he had a huge hit. Had a huge hit with Waterloo Bridge. Prior to that, he'd done a stage adaptation of World War One. Yeah, I'll say that again. World War One drama Journey's End. That was in London, then on Broadway, and he was hired to direct the film of it. Huge hit.
Mm-hmm.
He also did dialogue when Howard Hughes had made a film, Hell's Angels, also a World War One. Right on the cusp of silent to sound.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, well, for this to be commercially viable, we're going to have sound. So all the dialogue stuff was scrapped that had been shot silent. Hughes didn't know what to do, so he brought in Whale as, dialogue director. So essentially, Whale redirected about half of the film. Great movie. There's one scene that's literally, to this day, jaw-dropping, if you haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, there's a
I've
scene...
seen what I have seen is The Aviator. Have you seen that movie?
Yeah.
Because they go into
They do a little bit
of length
bit,
about
yeah.
the making of that
Yeah.
film. But James Whale, I don't even think it's a name.
No, I don't think so. There was a scene, in Hell's Angels that my friend John and I were watching
Don't spoil it.
I'm not going to. I was just going to say we
Been
were watching
85
it.
years.
He was in
88 years.
He was in New York. I was here in Minneapolis. We were on the phone as it was playing on TCM or something.
Yeah.
And we both literally were like, "Holy shit! Did you see that?"
Wow.
This is from a film from 1929, so
Nice.
it can still. So yeah, Universal hired him. after Journey's End was a big hit, he made a film called Waterloo Bridge. It was another World War One, which introduced him to Mae Clarke. Mm-hmm. Journey's End introduced him to Colin Clive. All names that'll be coming up soon.
Yep. I got him right here for some reason.
Do ya? Okay.
Yeah. So how is it? It's just presumably a matter of he is hotter than Flory, so he's given the ability to choose what he wants.
Yes, he's given carte blanche. Here's what we have.
Here's what we have.
What do you want?
This guy's working on this. Oh no, he's
not.
No,
he's not. That's what you think.
Yeah.
Well, that was basically it. I mean, he went through, and he was sick of making war film after war film.
Sure.
There's 3 in a row.
Yep.
Well, little did he realize.
Yeah, that's
the
true.
turn his life would take.
He didn't want to be typecast. Isn't the word, I guess, but close enough.
Typed. So he looked through all the properties and picked Frankenstein as the most challenging, and I think he referred to it as it would be fun. Mm-hmm. Fun to play with. Mm-hmm. And Flory was unceremoniously dumped off the project. Furious, he went and checked his contract, and it said he could direct a movie. Didn't say which one.
Right.
So as I think a fairly weak consolation prize, he and Lugosi ended up in Murders in the Rue Morgue, which.
So is that a weak consolation prize, or does that reflect on Lugosi and? I shouldn't say Lugosi up front like that, but does it reflect on Flory? Does it reflect what Flory was able to do?
I think it would. I think Frankenstein.
But James Whale wouldn't have made that Murders in the Rue.
No, it would have been a different room. It would have been a very different film.
Yeah.
No, I think it shows. It's a good example to show the difference between the two.
Yeah.
Because with Whale you get all the visuals and the expressionistic stuff and everything like that, and the great camera work, but you get the meat of the story as well, and you get the characterizations, the focus on the actors. Whereas in Murders in the Rue Morgue, you really don't. The characters are very bland. All the emphasis is on the showy camera work. And
there's some great stuff.
And some great stuff. Don't get me wrong.
In between the really bad stuff.
Really, yes. And don't intercut a guy in a gorilla suit with a real chimpanzee. Don't ever do that. Filmmakers listening, if you can hear the sound of my voice, don't do that.
That's like a mechanical shark. It's not
just
going to work.
Don't do it.
No.
No, so I think that's the big difference.
Yeah.
And
we wouldn't be doing Frankenstein Minute.
No, we wouldn't. There would not have been.
Especially not with Lugosi.
No. Well, we'll get into that too.
Maybe, who knows? Probably not.
I don't think there would be the whole Universal Monsters universe, whatever you want to call it, had that not happened.
Right. Had
James Whale not come in.
Yeah.
When he did.
Well, this is considered a classic film. This is considered
one
of the great films.
Beyond just horror films, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's down to James Whale.
Absolutely.
I think, obviously, there are factors that help with that. Some of the acting is phenomenal,
obviously,
but it's credit to
James
where
credit's due. Yeah, he took the project and elevated it beyond, I think, anybody's expectations.
Kind of a surprise that he kept Van Sloan and Dwight Fry, because he brought in his own people.
He brought in every other part was recast.
But I have to look at it and go, well, I guess he knew what he had, because they're great.
Yeah, they fit the roles perfectly.
They're perfect. Yeah.
And he brought with him. Whale brought with him a lot of his theater background. Again, working with actors and stuff. And Flory didn't have that.
Yeah.
He was basically a film guy.
Right.
So, I think that's the big difference.
So you mentioned that you mentioned Colin Clive and you mentioned Mae Clarke.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where we were, but one of the things I was going to say is it's clear when you get to that screen with the billing of the actors. Or am I getting ahead?
No.
Oh, okay. It really shows. Yeah, I guess it's funny to look at most movies and try to figure out what the billing means. Colin Clive obviously should get high billing.
Top billing, yes.
He is Frankenstein.
Yes.
But then you've got Mae Clarke, John Bowles.
That's going to be a tough minute.
That's going to be
John
a tough.
Bowles
the John Bowles. We're going to cover the John Bowles. Maybe we should just do all the John Bowles films. Minute by minute. Is there another one? I don't even know.
There must be.
And then, of course, in your billing next after Bowles, question mark. So, yeah, that shows you who's important.
Who's important.
What matters.
Yeah.
But that's Whale bringing in those people.
Whale brought in Colin Clive, again, from Journey's End.
Yeah.
Brought in Mae Clarke from Waterloo Bridge.
Yeah.
And she's fantastic in that. I mean,
haven't seen it.
she's great in most everything I've seen her in. Her career kind of, after the mid-30s, it kind of, I think there was some alcoholism or something.
Yeah, I guess I have heard that.
She's not in the sequel because she had a car accident. They had to be recast. I would love for her to have been in Bride.
Yeah.
You know, I think Valerie Hobson is okay, but she's a little lightweight.
She's beautiful.
She's beautiful, but she's a little lightweight, and I think Mae Clark had the gravitas that was needed.
There's some stuff that's obviously any movie, but movies of this period can lapse into what now really plays off as unintentionally funny,
right?
And that's Valerie Hobson.
Yeah, it crosses into the melodramatic and almost like, camp.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Then John Bowles question mark. We have no idea.
I can't imagine.
No, I don't know who.
I guess I just have to assume it's Lugosi.
Lugosi.
Lugosi. That sounds right.
As the monster.
Seems like what they would do.
Right. And we got Edward Van Sloan, of course, and we talked about.
Yep.
Minnesota's own.
Minnesota's own. Edward Van Sloan. Chaska's own.
Pride of Chaska.
The Pride of Chaska.
There's a statue of him there if you go.
Is that true?
I wish there were.
Oh, man. Let's get a statue.
There should. Let's get a petition.
All right, so what we're going to do is this is really just a front for our Kickstarter. We're going to do a Kickstarter to get an Edward Van Sloan. We sucked you in. God, that would be great. Well, we got $40. What can we do with that?
Yeah. I can draw a picture.
We can just
tack it to a phone pole.
People would be like, what, is he missing? Just no.
Have you seen this man? Not since 1964, anyway.
Been missing since 1964. Where have you gone, Edward Van Sloan?
Well, then we got Frederick Kerr. Kerr.
Yeah,
who Whale brought in as well to add a little humor, which he does. I've always found him. If you can get past the baseball-sized goiter on the side of his neck, he's an awful fun.
I think it works really well.
Yeah, no, I think it fits the tone. Yeah, it's comic relief that doesn't. I think, I could compare him to like Una O'Connor in anything she's in.
Yeah.
I'll take Frederick Kerr.
Yeah, definitely.
It's more subtle. It's more dry. Apparently Whale was quite fond of Una O'Connor. I'm not, but she does add something.
Yeah, I think. Well, this is something we'll definitely get into with Whale because we're gonna be with Whale for quite some time
here.
He liked to juxtapose horror and comedy and. It almost always works.
Yeah,
it works.
No, I think it always works. I think because he had a sly quality about it, and I think it really comes to the fore in Bride.
Yeah,
which is as funny as it is horror.
Yeah, and then you've got Ernest Thesiger. Which is he just lives on that line.
Yeah. I think he spent his entire life straddling
on that line.
Yeah.
Between scary and funny.
Yeah. Next is Dwight Frye, of course, Renfield from Dracula as Fritz, or as the script calls him, the dwarf, which I never thought of him as a dwarf, but always both copies, and I believe the play all refer to him as the dwarf. Character Fritz comes from the first stage production in 1823. As Presumption, The Fate of Frankenstein. It was the only adaptation Mary Shelley herself ever saw in her lifetime. And she apparently quite liked it.
Did you say 1823?
1823.
So yeah, definitely. You said the second version of the book came out after that.
31, yeah.
She was inspired by the play.
Must have been, yeah. That's a great idea.
Yeah. There's a dwarf
Wish
in
I would have thought of that. Everything's better with a dwarf in it.
That's what's missing.
Yeah.
That's what's missing from our podcast.
Yes, we did. Oh man! Send your hate mail to Bill Evanson.
God. Yeah, we are just gonna cut so much of this out. All right.
Lionel Belmore as the Burgermeister, who will be replaced in the sequel. But he shows up again in Sun. I think he's in.
Really?
In Ghost. Yeah, a lot of these guys pop up.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
In different roles usually.
Yeah. Everyone dies. And then they don't all die, but maybe they do actually. And then they're all back.
Recast,
they're even sitting in the same spot in the same room they were before.
Yeah. certainly between Son and Ghost.
Yeah, that's
yeah.
right.
There's a lot of yeah.
Wait a minute.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, they're in Young Frankenstein in the same. No.
Yeah, man, that could be.
It could be.
Well, Dwight Fry. You're on the Dwight Fry section.
Fry.
He's in. God, I don't know all these.
Oh,
movies.
he's in all. Like I've got a bunch of stuff on
He's
him.
in the first 4 I can off the top of my head.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of
Maybe
stuff
not
on
in
him when he shows up in the
Yeah.
film.
We'll talk about him.
We'll go there. Marilyn Harris, of course, the little girl who is drowned.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know much about her. She's in Bride very briefly.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
All right, we'll
Yep.
get to that someday.
She's very briefly, and then she has one line, I think.
Okay.
And apparently the most horrific stage mother you could ever imagine.
That's what I. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's that. Well, she's just got the one. She's in one scene, so
Yeah.
she's only really talked about that one.
Right,
Thing
and so we can wait.
that day.
We can wait.
Yeah.
And then not cast in the opening is Michael Mark, who plays her father, which I think that's interesting. Yeah. Why he didn't get a
very,
credit.
very distinctive looking guy.
Yeah,
who's
who
not,
showed up all
not
the way
insignificant.
all the way into the 60s.
Oh, okay.
Did stuff. And several other Frankenstein films in different roles again. I know he's in Ghost for sure.
Yeah.
You know, as a,
I can just picture.
you see him.
These
Yeah,
movies, when you watch them all in a row,
yeah,
they do tend to kind of repeat in a very charming way.
Yes.
The villagers, there's villagers, and there are torches.
Yep.
And yeah, they're all coming after the one
and
guy.
There's stock footage too that shows up again and again and
It's
again.
true.
Yeah. Also not credited as Jack Pierce.
Yeah, because what did he have to do with it?
Yeah, you know, just the makeup guy,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Don't want to go into him too much until the moment.
Yeah, that'll work.
But you know, he's one of 3 people that had an enormous contribution that has had such a huge impact on 21st century culture.
Yeah.
You know, you think of Frankenstein, you think of that design. You can't help it.
Yeah.
You know.
He did he work? Am I right in thinking he worked on the Flory test footage as well?
Yeah, he
didn't have a very good time.
He did. He wanted to do what he wanted to do, and Lugosi was Lugosi and had his own ideas, and well, they didn't work, and neither did Lugosi after that. So
yeah, that Lugosi footage, have to assume.
I assume it's
to
lost.
people of our ilk, if that's a thing. It's the lost
like the
footage.
Holy Grail,
the Holy
yeah.
Grail
Yeah.
of lost footage.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Oh well. Because what's funny is that presumably it's terrible.
Yeah, that's what I understand.
And yet it's the Holy Grail.
It's the Holy Grail. Well, you know, London After Midnight is sort of the Holy Grail of the lost Lon Chaney silence, and from what I understand, that's probably going to be disappointing too. Yeah. So
did they do that? They did a reconstruction on.
They did.
TCM or
yeah.
somewhere.
They're using stills and.
Any good? Did you see that?
You know, it is what it is. I'll say that.
Did someone read the parts or?
No, it was silent film.
Oh, silent.
So.
What am I thinking? Of course. So
yeah,
they had music.
They read the parts, but then they had titles up for what they said.
Very strange choice, but that's how they did it. They decided to do it that way.
I wasn't in charge. All
right. Well, London After Midnight Minute would be a lot more boring.
Yeah, it would. And another person not mentioned is Ken Strickfaden.
Jeez.
Didn't get any.
Oh, God.
He of course did all the electrical effects.
So you maybe could justify the monster ? Makeup ? Special effects ? Because they do have such an important part in this.
Yeah. I just think it's odd that they're not there.
Yeah.
But you know, a lot of early 30s credits are like that. You know, they don't.
It's done in a minute.
Yeah, it is, and we're done with this minute.
I think we're done with this minute.
I think we're done here.
All right.
So tune in next time for minute 3 of Frankenstein Minute. You have been warned.
Belong dead.
Prepare for a spine-tingling, nerve-shattering podcast featuring all your favorite monsters. You won't believe your ears when you listen to Monster Kid Radio. Hear your host, Derek M. Cook and his ever-rotating stable of guests discuss your favorite classics and sometimes not-so-classic monster movies. Subscribe to Monster Kid Radio through iTunes or Stitcher, or visit monsterkidradio.net before the next weekly episode of Monster Kid Radio. Go through the archives for interviews with Sarah Karloff, Victoria Price, and Joel Hodgson. Listen to discussions about movies like Creature from the Black Lagoon, Island of Terror, and King Kong. And don't forget convention coverage from Monster Bash and the H.P. Lovecraft Film Festival, Classic Monsters, Modern Talk, and the Head of Rondo Hatton, only on Monster Kid Radio.